roll it up, we gon' burn it down.
Hello and welcome back everyone to PKIdeas for another tournament reflections video. This time around we'll be looking at round number 2 of the Australian Young Masters that I had played. And this time around we are white and we're versing someone named Hui-Si. The game went as follows. Let's get straight into it. So the first move was knight f3. As you all know, I play this and I like to play it. From this position I can play something like, so in this position I can play something like either e4 or d4 or d3 or go for a Catalan. I have all of these choices that I can play by playing knight f3. Rather, if you play something like e4 or d4 first move, you're kind of limited to openings that start from those moves. So after knight f3, c6, followed by d4, d5, c3, knight f6, and now I decided to go for a Colle system by playing e3. Now instead of e3, what engine recommends is that I play bishop g5. This is normal lines that can be played. The main advantage is that your bishop is out here instead of being stuck on c1. After bishop to g5, knight to e4 is what they recommend, after which bishop to f4, queen to b6, queen to b3, bishop f5, e3, knight d7, bishop e2, e6, and so equal position. Both sides have chances, both sides have semi-open positions, quite close pawn structures in general. Over here you have this pawn pyramid and black has that pawn pyramid, so game goes on. Now let's go back to the game. After e3, bishop to g4. Bishop to g4 is a novelty. I actually haven't seen that being played before. The whole idea of bishop to g4, I think, is just to pin the knight to the queen like this. There are ideas where I play either queen b3 or queen to c2, after which the bishop can obviously take the knight and get away with it. Knight b to d2. After knight b to d2, e6, bishop to d3, bishop to d6, castles, castles. Development is as normal in the Colle system. You have this bishop on d3, you have this knight on d2, guarding the knight on f3. So this queen over here is free to move to c2. That being said, e4, d takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4. After which knight to d7 was played. The idea of knight to d7 is to bring the knight back to... In this position I played h3, kicking the bishop away. After h3, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and now I have the advantage of the two bishops. Now the real question is, what am I exactly going to do in this position? What's the plan? So the general basic plan, I think, is just to try and break open this e-file over here, as Colle arrows show. There are also ideas where you attack on h7. That's pretty normal as well. Those are the major two plans in this position for white. And queen to c7, queen to b3, pawn to b5, c4, and here I'm starting an attack over on the queen side, and the reason is because she's developing all her pieces out and I shouldn't let her get too comfortable about having the free space all to herself. So I have to challenge this b5 move by playing c4, and as the engine shows, I'm slightly better in this position, only slightly though. Now rook a to b8 was played, and I can't now take anymore on b5 because of c takes b5, and essentially black has got the c file all to herself. So after rook 8 to b8, I played c5, bishop to e7, and g3. Now the idea is obviously playing something like bishop to f4, and the queen is skewered to the rook. Queen to c8. Now instead of queen to c8 here, I was playing that she could play something like e5, and now after e5, d takes e5, knight takes e5, and queen c3, and engine says that the position is essentially a draw. So that was one way that she could have gone about it, but she was a bit too passive. So after g3, queen c8 wasn't actually necessary in this position. So bishop to f4, rook to b7, bishop to g2, followed by knight to f6. Now instead of bishop to g2, engine is also suggesting that I can play something like a4. a4, bringing in the rook into the game, and you're attacking this weak a7 pawn in the near future. So after a4, they're saying e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes, and pawn takes a4. After which you have queen takes a4, bishop takes c5, and the position is kind of equal. So I didn't necessarily want to go towards equality. Instead, bishop to g2 happened, knight to f6. Engine is saying that the position is a clear draw. But I decided to play on a4, knight to d5, bishop takes d5, b takes a4, queen takes a4. Now in this position, I could have played bishop takes e6. Bishop takes e6 wins a pawn, I'm pretty sure. Yep. And then a takes b3, bishop takes c8, and rook takes c8. And now white is slightly better because he has, in fact, blocked all activity. If you look at the structure over here, you look at the pawn on a7, that's a backward pawn. Pawn on c6, that's a backward pawn, and the pawn on b3 can't be guarded by anything else except for a piece. I mean, a5 to a4 isn't realistic because this rook on c8 has to be always guarding this pawn on c6. Otherwise, I will be going rook a6, attacking that pawn, and you can say goodbye to that one. Instead, I did queen takes a4, going with a much simpler option. E takes d5, king g2, and now rook takes b2. The positions are still slightly better for me. Queen takes a7, and now bishop to f6. The idea of playing bishop to f6 is to attack this pawn on d4. Now the pawn on d4 is an important pawn because you look at black's pawn on d5, and the only thing that's holding it back is the pawn on d4. So as soon as black gets rid of the pawn on d4, the sooner that she can go and start an attack on her own. And in this position, I played rook f to b1. And here, bishop takes d4 happened. So bishop takes d4 right over here, and this happened. And here you can see that the engine is saying that that is a complete blunder. Instead of bishop takes d4, rook takes b1, rook takes b1, queen e6 should have been played. I knew that bishop takes d4 was more like poison pawn. So if you want to right now, after bishop takes d4, try and analyze his whole position out. Alright, so the general plan with allowing bishop takes d4 is that you can play rook takes b2, bishop takes b2, and rook b1. Now this bishop has not a lot of squares to go to. So we look at the a1 square, that's blocked. We look at the e5 square, that's blocked. And now the rest of the squares, we have c3, we have d4, and we have f6. So here, black decided to play bishop to f6. But let's say what happens if the bishop goes to c3. So if bishop to c3, rook to b8, queen to e6, rook takes f8, king takes f8, bishop d6, king e8, and now you go queen to b8 check, king d7, queen c7 check, king e8, and now queen takes c6. So eventually I'm going to win a pawn. I'm going to win this pawn as well. And black's game is pretty much over. So that's after bishop to c3. Now equivalent would be after bishop to d4. But bishop to d4 is a bit more active in terms of black because essentially you're attacking this pawn on c5 over here. So after this move, I can still play rook to b8 and let's say queen to e6, just like before. And after rook takes f8, king takes f8, bishop to d6, then queen takes d6, which is the tactic if pawn takes, then bishop takes a7, win for black. But here I do have queen to a8 check, and this pretty much forces the king to come up and then say goodbye to the queen. So whatever that black does in this position with the bishop, she seems to be losing material. And so bishop to f6 was pretty much justified. Rook to b8, going straight for the kill. Queen to e6, rook takes, king takes, bishop check. And now king to e8. Now comes a dangerous combination where I win 2 pawns for free. Queen to a8 check, bishop d8, queen takes e6. Now what does black do? Can he move his king anywhere? No, that square's blocked, that square's blocked. And king there is definitely not an option. So instead, queen has to block. And now I win the second pawn. After this position, queen to e6. And now I played queen c6 check, queen d7, queen e4 check, bishop e7, and I took the pawn on h7. So obviously my bishop and my pawn are going to go, this bishop's going to go, and one of these pawns are going to go. In the end, it's going to be 3 pawns against 1 pawn, as well as a pair of queens on the board. So the game is pretty much decided that it's going to be a win for me. But she decided to play on a little bit here. Bishop takes d6, c takes d6, queen takes d6, queen takes g7, queen d5, check, king h2, queen d2, queen e5 check, king over to f8, queen over to e3. Swapping the queens off. As soon as I swap the queens off, the easier that it's going to be for me. Queen to c2, h4, queen f5, now queen h6 check, and in this position the only move which didn't swap the queens off was king to e8, and I don't have any more checks which force the queens off the board. But what she played was king to e7. Now unfortunately that falls for queen to g5 check, after which queen takes, pawn takes, and then king back, king forward, king to g4, king g6, f4, and she resigned in this position right over here. As engine shows that it is going to be checkmate in 17 moves. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like down below if you did. Please go down below and hit that red subscribe button for me. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down below of any of the analysis that I had missed. But if not, comment on anything that you want, anything that you would like to say. So with that being said, thank you, and I will see you next time.